To commemorate the 20th anniversary of bioconjugate chemistry, we sat down with Claude Meares, editor-in-chief, and Peter Center, senior editor, to reflect on the growth of the journal and the field. To someone who's not familiar with bioconjugate chemistry, how would you describe this type of chemical science?
Well, it involves a certain amount of synthetic chemistry, using technology that's not purely chemical technology. Often there's a fair amount of biology, molecular biology, involved in preparing a product that has more than one function. That's really the driving force for everything we do.
Can you tell us about the key areas of research that bioconjugate chemistry covers?
Well, it's an interesting question because when the journal first began, bioconjugate chemistry was really in its infancy. And so the initial areas of research that were begun with the journal involved developing new types of reagents and technologies that allowed bifunctional molecules to be produced. But since then, I think the technology has become quite a bit more sophisticated, and the emphasis is not so much on the particular aspects of joining two molecules of interest, but on the types of biological activities that those molecules have.
What are some of the up-and-coming subtopics of bioconjugate chemistry that you see on the horizon in the coming years?
Well, one of the things that we're doing right now is to emphasize a little bit more the review articles for the journal. So we've been getting a lot of really interesting review articles that have featured areas of research that are very important. We've had review articles on how to get things past the blood-brain barrier. We've had review articles on different types of testing systems to evaluate the activity of new types of molecules. And I think that we've also had a number of review articles on imaging technologies. These are all areas that I think the journal will be focusing more attention on in the future.
Yeah, and I would only add that I've become very humble in watching the manuscripts submitted to the journal in my inability to predict what we're going to see, because some things just sort of come out of nowhere and become wonderful all by themselves. I think things like native ligation, things like other enzymatically mediated conjugation chemistries, which really started off somewhere in biology and suddenly got a focused application in bioconjugate chemistry, lead me to think that the really big ones we're not going to be able to predict. We can see the evolution of some of these methods, but I look forward to the surprises.
Claude, many chemists know of your work with bifunctional chelating agents. Can you explain the impact of these agents?
Yeah, a lot of people are aware of what we did a long time ago now in taking an element out of the periodic table and synthesizing a ligand which would bind that element very tightly and also attach it to a biological molecule such as a protein or an antibody for targeting in usually in cancer. And so that work went from studies in vitro to animal model studies and to clinical trials. Those molecules and those techniques have stood the test of time. They're still in use now. They're still a very important part of research in a number of areas. There's other uses for elements in the periodic table, and one of my favorite ones is an iron chelate that we call PHEBABE that we use to basically chop up proteins or nucleic acids, and it will also do other molecules, so that we can put the pieces back together and figure out what the original structure was.
Peter, what are your scientific interests?
The most recent area that I've been involved with is the use of monoclonal antibodies for drug delivery. And it's an area that was around quite a long time ago, but it's only been in the last few years that significant progress in the field has been made. And we've published a lot of our papers in bioconjugate chemistry in this area. What we do is we take highly potent anti-cancer drugs and attach them to monoclonal antibodies and use the monoclonal antibody to deliver the drugs to tumor sites so that the drug doesn't go to all of the normal tissues in the body.
Claude, do you feel the journal has met its goal set at launch to contribute to a better understanding of the molecular events that govern the properties of bioconjugates?
Yeah, absolutely. When I try to remember back to 1990 in the dark ages, as Peter mentioned earlier, there was a time when everybody had to take a lot of guesses about what would work. We had some enormous challenges on delivering drugs or signaling molecules, usually to cancer, but sometimes other diseases. And there simply was not an organized body of literature that we could refer to. And we found ourselves, I think all of us at that time, just sort of cut and try. It was very empirical. And over the 20 years or so, there is now a body of knowledge. There is an established group of technologies that are well characterized and reliable. If today you need to deliver a targeted therapy to a particular disease, you know where to start. You don't really have to start from scratch. And as in all sciences that become mature, the rate of progress increases sharply as time goes on.
Peter, what is the most rewarding aspect for you of being the senior editor of Bioconjugate Chemistry?
I think the thing that I love about being the senior editor of Bioconjugate Chemistry is being exposed to such a broad scope of science, and to be able to see so many manuscripts so often. And some of the manuscripts are just very interesting. I love looking at manuscripts of areas that are brand new and pioneering. And so that's been one of the things I've enjoyed the most.
And Claude, what is the most rewarding aspect for you of being editor-in-chief of the journal?
Well, it's always been important to serve the community. I think, again, looking back to when the journal started, as Peter mentioned, that was a time when there was not a good place to publish work like this, and so it ended up being scattered around. Some important biological result would not be accompanied by a detailed description of the chemical synthesis and characterization that underlay the biology. And everything was slowed down because of that lack of organization. So I think the journal has served that part of the scientific community really, I think, very well.
Thank you both for taking the time to meet with me today here at UC Davis, and congratulations on 20 years of excellence for bioconjugate chemistry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.